Making a video. Yeah, probably a Philosopher Roundtable video. Yeah, I think we'll change things a little bit this time, just for this round anyway, just to see if it makes any difference. So I'm going to make a video right now, and if if somebody comments in this video that's a good comment, an anti, some disputing comment, then the next person, and they see it's, and they agree with me, but they see the comment, they should read the comment and respond to the comment. Yeah. So we should deal with elements of disagreement with the video, and yeah, see where that goes, and then I can edit this video for just the part that was disagreed with, or kind of something like that anyway. All right, something you get it, I think. Well, anyway, so the subject is value, and whether there is an absolute real value. Objective, subjective, don't have to use those words. But just this idea, is there a truth regarding value? So value, truth. I would argue that we know certain things for sure. We can say, yes, we're having a conscious experience, and yes, whatever it is, whether illusion, a manifestation, embodied, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. From personal experience, I know it's significant. It just is. It's happening. And it's, I can sense nothing else in the universe projecting or creating, generating this thing except other consciousnesses. It's an incredibly real experience, and it's vivid sensing. It's something, and it definitely has this element of nice and awful, or horrible and great, or good and bad. Yeah, so it's generating value. These experiences are in and of themselves valuable. The bad experiences, the suffering experiences, the unpleasant, nasty, repulsive, good word, experiences have negative value weight, quite absolutely. There's no rational, no reasonable, no logical, no fact-based reason, thought, idea, concept I can conceive of or have heard of to negate the fact of this experience. It seems totally coherent to the natural purpose, which was to create a mechanism of repulsion and attraction. That seems the reason it exists is because it did create, it did generate something capable of moving matter. Yeah, and it's just totally coherent to everything known to say, yes, these feelings are real and they matter. Now the conversation goes to, is something else valuable? Are projections, our thoughts, ideas, opinions we have also reliable at defining value? Values, for example. Somebody might value, I have to pick things, of course, a diamond, because it's sparkly and rare. Are diamonds valuable? The problem is when diamonds are created through the expenditure of value, in that sentient beings must suffer for their creation, for digging them out of the ground. So their value is a transfer of value. There's a commodity to it. So you could argue that yes, they have the value that's built into their production, the cost of their production in terms of human sacrifice and suffering and pain gives them value, affected value. So the next thing let's see what else could we speculate on the value of. Does this rock have value? Now, if I give you the condition that the rock will not cure cancer or be significantly involved in any human event relative to our progress, we could probably say that it has no value. Now, if some person came along and said, I value the rock, I like it, it's my friend, it's cool, it's a good shape, it's pretty, it's attractive, does that mean it now? The rock has value merely because a person says so. I'd argue that the equation to judge that opinion would be, is it critical to their welfare? If the rock exists or does not exist, or if there's a consequence here, does that value mean anything? Are they allowed to have that affection, or should it compromise some, like say we wanted to put a dam here and make a lake and generate electricity and all that kind of stuff, some public good was going to be stopped because this one person had a value attachment. All that we're really saying is how much is their statement of value worth? Their feelings, their hurt feelings, their disappointment if the rock isn't protected. Because the rock itself, just because they say it has value, it doesn't necessarily have value. It's just a delusion in their head. And we can respect the impact on them because they have that delusion, but we don't have to respect the delusion. Alright, so getting to the more pertinent kind of subject. When people project value onto life itself and say a living thing has value, are they saying that its welfare has value? Are they saying that it's accomplishing its full existence has value? Realizing its ambitions has value? Living into the future, creating prodigy has value. Those definitions or statements of value have to be analyzed for what logic or basis they have. What's the foundational value it's based on? And if it's just a dogma because God says so, and conversely for many atheists because nature says so, it's a pretty empty statement. There's no truth value to God says so, and there's certainly no credibility value to nature says so. So there has to be more to the argument being made about a theory of value that just states there's intrinsic value, fundamental value, without some explanation of its origin, its necessity, how if it does not happen, what the negative consequence would be. And that's always the catch. The gain engine has a weaker potential than the harm engine. It's a lot harder to see how the absence of something is as catastrophic as the absence of something positive as the presence of something negative. One perception, by perception anyway, seems quite obvious that one has more weight than the other. A loss of a profit versus a loss of a necessity. These things seem very fundamental, even in how we live our lives. Many people will say, if you've got your health, you've got everything. And there's a certain truth to it. If you're not being blighted in horrible, distracting, obsessive misery, clearly your potential is wide open. Because you're not consuming your resources on just maintaining your survival. So again, I want to try to get this more to the idea of this distinction between value that can be connected to a kernel, a source. So I'm arguing that the feelings have certain value, and the difference between that and the subjective perception of it's cute or it's pretty. So maybe get to aesthetics. Our perceptions of aesthetics, if somebody says something is beautiful, can it be judged that way outside of recognition of getting back to some kind of kernel? So if somebody says the ceiling on the Sistine Chapel is valuable because it's a work of art, if it didn't exist, if it was going to be threatened, what would be the consequence of the threat? Is the consequence that nobody in the future would see it? Or is the consequence that people who know of it would be hurt? They would be hurt by its non-existence. So the value might be in the fact that people would be capable of being hurt by its non-existence, not the fact that it didn't exist. That there might not be any real harm to it never existing beyond the harm to people who were aware of its existence in the first place. It's as if you had to acquire a taste or addiction to it, attachment to it, before it can have any value, because now its value will be derived from the negative effect on you created by its non-existence. So all this kind of tends to lead towards the ultimate perception that when people project the value onto the existence of the human race, the existence of life on Earth, is that declaration of value a statement regarding a necessity or a urgency or a reality, or is it just a personal delusion, a personal perception or statement of dependency? They've become attached to the idea of it, and the idea of it not existing deprivates them. If I was to end baseball tomorrow, many people would be deprivated. They'd find it very unsettling because it's a part of their life, part of their perception of how life works, of their routine. And the same is true of this perception of life existing on Earth. They've just become attached to the idea of it. And beyond their perception, their reaction, their negative reaction, there may be no truth value to the function or value of it actually existing. Life doesn't actually perform any utility, any function, doesn't mitigate against any substantial. I guess I better turn the filter on. You know, I'm running late. It doesn't satisfy a need outside the needs of the people attached to it. Take away their attachment, take away humans' attachment to, say, their race or their species or their kind, and does the thing in and of itself have value? Does it function as a value creator on net? And I think the argument could be made, quite obviously, that for the living atmosphere, there is much more potential for losing than winning. It is like gambling. It has a perceived value to the people needing the fun of it, the adventurousness of it, but it does in fact take a lot more than it gives in terms of the actual financial welfare of the people who participate. And so I am kind of dragging this out a bit, but it doesn't really matter. Like I said, I'll edit this down to the parts that need to be said, I think. Yeah, one hopes. Definitely taking that little bit out. So yeah, the difference between a projected value and an actual value is, I guess, the subject. Values of our perception versus values created by perception versus values that value created by our consciousness. The core value versus the synthetic values of our own personal dependencies, our own subjective taste and preference and prejudice. And I'd say there is certainly a distinction between the core value of sentient experience and the synthetic values of statements, perceptions sentient beings can have regarding the value of what they are personally hungry for, or attached to, or addicted to, or dependent on in some way. That the two values are very different. One is real, and the other is synthetic and of no consequence beyond the fact that an individual does hold those values, and they may be caused value distress, conscious uncomfortableness, if they are denied attainment, satisfaction of their hunger, and the peace of mind of retaining their perception or delusion of that it will remain, that it will not go away, kind of thing. Anyway, it's more difficult than I thought it was to get to the distinction. I don't know if I successfully did it, but there are two kinds of value. Values of our judgment and values of our function. We generate values as a sentient being, and we create fake values as a judging machine. No, it doesn't count. Very swampy. It really has gotten swampy. Extremely swampy. Yep. Anyway. which is nice. Oh, garbage. Somebody ought to fish that out. I'll do that later. You can really see it there, see? It's all filled in with sediment. See, they ought to put a dam there, and they could trap all the sediment behind the dam, and then they could just dig it out every year. And then the pond would stay not full of sediment and such. Mostly. Until next time.